I knew something was off the moment Bryce walked into the Kansas City conference room grinning like he just sold ice to an Eskimo. That smug energy meant one thing: he was about to offload another one of his screw-ups onto me. But even I wasn't ready for the memo that hit my inbox that morning. Subject line: updated discounted tier guidelines. Internal only. No explanation. No prep call. Just corporate code for we're about to shortchange a client and call it innovation. By then, I'd already spent weeks building the entire Redmont workshop, content demos, assessments, you name it. I even had dashboards more detailed than the client's own HR database. And when I brought up concerns, Bryce just waved me off like I was background noise. "We'll circle back," he muttered, eyes glued to Slack. Let's be clear, I wasn't some junior analyst fresh out of grad school. I'm Linda Cartwright, 52 years old, and I'd been holding this company's logistics operation together for over a decade. But loyalty means nothing in a place where experience gets treated like an overhead cost. Still, I kept my mouth shut. Because like so many others my age, I had a mortgage, rising insurance premiums, and my dad's prescriptions to cover. You don't walk away just because someone disrespects you. You wait, you prepare. So I did. I built backup slides, tech fail-safes, and plan B through G. Because Bryce, he treats preparation like it's a communicable disease. And the Redmont account? It was our golden goose. Victor Lang, CEO of Redmont Holdings, had flown in from Chicago for this. The man owns more companies than I've owned umbrellas. And Bryce decides to comp part of the session without asking me. Like we're running a raffle, not a high-stakes training initiative. Marketing was clueless. Legal said we'll get back to you. And our VP of sales sunning in Cabo. Typical. The kicker: I wasn't even on the invite list for the pre-meeting dinner. Bryce's name was everywhere on the decks, the invite, even the handouts I created. I should have walked right then. But that's the trap, isn't it? You tell yourself one more quarter, one more raise, one more win, and maybe they'll see your worth. The morning of the workshop, I got there early to test the AV setup. But the room wasn't empty. Victor was already inside reviewing a printed slide. He didn't look up, just said, "Who built these?" "They're good." Before I could respond, Bryce barged in with 2 coffees. One labeled Victor, the other blank. Guess who didn't get one? Victor barely acknowledged him. I watched Bryce flounder through his notes like a high schooler bluffing a book report. That's when it hit me. He hadn't done any of the prep. No analytics, no insights. Just relied on me to save him. Again, but not this time. On my way back from setting up the chairs, Bryce stopped me with his trademark reptile grin. "Quick word," he whispered, gripping my arm. "We'll need you to run today's session." As a courtesy, think of it as goodwill. I blinked. "You mean run the session I built for free?" He shrugged. "Do it for the relationship. Or pack up." That was it. The last straw. I smiled, nodded, and said, "Thanks for the clarity." Then I turned on my heel and walked toward the moment that would change everything. I yanked my arm back, not rudely, just enough to say, "Don't touch me like you earned it." Then I followed Bryce 2 steps into the hallway where the carpet still smelled like fresh glue and false promises. That's when he dropped the grenade. "Listen," he said, glancing down the hall like someone might overhear the scam swirling in his skull. "We're going to need you to run today's session as a courtesy." My eyebrow went up so hard I thought I pulled something. He shifted uncomfortably. "Just goodwill. There's been pushback on pricing. You know how corporate gets with discounts." I stared at him. "Let me get this straight. You want me to run the flagship Redmont workshop for free after I built it, customized every module, and prepped all the analytics?" He dropped his voice to a hiss. "Do it for the relationship or pack up your call." Like he was offering me a sandwich, not erasing months of work with a flick of ego. The heat climbed from the base of my neck straight to my sternum. That slow, steady rage. I should have let him have it. Told him where to file his goodwill. But I didn't. I nodded, cool as marble. "Thanks for the clarity," and I walked back to the conference room. My heels echoed down the hallway like a countdown clock. Inside, the air had changed. Redmont's executive team had arrived. 7 of them. Not 3 like Bryce claimed. At the head of the table, Victor Lang, all calm silence, sipping water like he already knew how this was about to go. I stepped forward, clicked the remote. My name filled the first slide. Linda Cartwright, lead strategy consultant. I paused, then set the clicker down. I won't be leading today's session, I said. I've just been informed it will be delivered at no charge. I wasn't consulted on that arrangement, so I'll be stepping away. Silence. One guy dropped his pen. Through the glass wall, Bryce turned the color of canned beets. I didn't explain. Didn't rant. Just picked up my bag, nodded to Victor and walked out. Past the ferns, past the front desk where the receptionist opened her mouth, but I kept going. Down the elevator, out into the Kansas July heat. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the weight of explaining myself. I just felt free. I'd barely made it 3 steps toward my car when I heard the door open behind me. Linda, Victor. Calm, unreadable. He held out a business card. I had a feeling it wasn't him, he said. That prep, the insight, the structure. That wasn't Bryce. That had backbone. He handed me the card. I read it, Senior Vice President, Organizational Development. Redmont Holdings. Not just the company we service, the parent company. Let's talk soon, he said. And not as a courtesy. Then he turned and walked back inside, like he hadn't just rewritten my career in 12 words. I stood there staring at that card like it was a key. Because maybe it was. Inside, Bryce was likely unraveling in front of Redmont's board. But I was in the parking lot, holding the first real door I'd seen in years. The workshop wasn't the story anymore. The story was this. I walked out, didn't look back, and someone with real power looked at me and said, I see you. And meant it. 15 minutes later, I was still sitting in my car. Engine off. Air conditioning blasting. Not because it was hot, but because my thoughts were racing. What if this was a test? What if I'd just burned the only bridge I had? What if Victor was bluffing? What if I just ruined everything? Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text lit up the screen. Linda, Victor Lang. I'd like to set up a quick conversation. Informal. Just coffee. We're exploring something bigger around training standardization. Your input would be valuable. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., Cafe Ibis downtown. I stared at the message like it might vanish if I blinked. It didn't. And the business card on the passenger seat still read, Senior Vice President, Organizational Development, Redmont Holdings. Not just the branch, the whole damn parent company. I drove home with the radio off, trying to breathe. Bryce's stunned face kept replaying in my head. Mouth half open, eyes twitching, trying to yank back control of a story that had never been his to tell. That night, I barely slept. Not from anxiety adrenaline. For the first time in years, my brain was awake. And if you're ready to see what happened after Bryce left that room, go ahead and subscribe. The next chapter's already unfolding, and trust me, you'll want a front row seat. I pulled out my old notebooks. The ones I used to jot real ideas in before every meeting became a game of dodge the blame. I opened a blank doc on my laptop and titled it, If I Were in Charge, and I wrote modules, gaps, bottlenecks, metrics that matter, real ways to track learning, not just smiley faces on surveys, scalable, measurable, built without smoke or mirrors. I showed up to Cafe Ibis 5 minutes early. Victor was already there, no assistant, no fluff. Just him, a notebook, and a look that said he wasn't wasting time. Linda? He nodded. Let's get to it. He slid a folder across the table. We've been reviewing our vendor pipeline. It's fragmented, sloppy. Some of the worst training we've paid too much for. Then he looked me in the eye. Your prep was the best we've seen all quarter. But more than that, we know it was yours. Not Bryce's. I blinked. How? He smiled. Calm, certain. You'd be surprised what gets said in procurement meetings when people think no one's listening. I let out a laugh, dry but real. So what are you asking? He leaned in. We're not offering a job. We're offering a partnership. Quiet for now, but meaningful. You'd consult directly with us. No red tape, no Bryce. I nodded slowly, my pulse suddenly louder than the cafe music. I'd need to set up an LLC, I said. We'll connect you with legal. he replied, already texting someone. You'll review our vendors, identify redundancies, and guide structural improvements. You'll have support, full autonomy. Then he added, sliding one last document across the table. Start with this. It was a list of current training vendors under Redmont Holdings. Halfway down, highlighted in pale gray, Bryce's company, flagged for review. I looked up. This wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. This was a door. One I was finally ready to walk through. The following Monday, I stepped into a low-lit boardroom on the 17th floor of Redmont's tower. No name tags, no icebreakers. Just 10 seats and 10 people who already knew who I was. A woman in a tailored navy suit looked up. Linda Cartwright, she said, reading from the agenda. Welcome. We're glad you came in quietly. The PR can wait. And just like that, we began. No welcome packet, no small talk. Just work. Real work. Finally, no intros, no small talk. Just a rotating screen of vendor analytics and internal notes that would have given any seasoned consultant chest pain. Supply chain readiness, said a man 2 seats down. We've had 4 system-wide slowdowns in the last 18 months, all tied to training failures. Misunderstood protocols, misconfigured systems, delays that cost us in days, not hours. I didn't speak, just nodded and let the data speak for itself. Levi, calm and direct, said we want to know the real cost of bad learning. And what you'd build if there were no handcuffs. By the end of the meeting, I walked out with 3 assignments. 1 audit for warehousing, 1 for last mile distribution, 1 for vendor onboarding, 3 separate beasts. All supposedly custom built by the same vendor, my old company. I recognized the materials immediately. I had written half of them. I also knew exactly how and where they'd fail. Levi handed me a badge with a guest QR code and a burner laptop. This stays off the org chart, she said. For now. It was surreal. A week ago, I was printing name tags for Bryce's ego parade. Now, I was embedded inside one of the biggest holding companies in the Midwest, digging into digital rot and peeling back years of cover-ups. I dove in pulled training modules, tagged duplicate content, flagged outdated terms, and compliance gaps. It was corporate forensics wrapped in a spreadsheet. The deeper I went, the clearer the truth became. Bryce's firm had coasted for years on recycled PDFs, bloated learning platforms, and duct-taped acronyms parading as strategy. Meanwhile, LinkedIn lit up. First came Rebecca from HR, heard you're doing exciting things, so proud of you. Then Ethan from Sales Quick Call, would love to pick your brain. Then Sarah, my old desk neighbor, sent a waving cat gif and a one-liner. Should I start job hunting? They weren't just curious. They sensed it like blood in the water. The silence from Bryce's corner office had gone from smug to spooked. I clicked over to Redmont's internal event calendar. Their annual vendor development summit was in 2 weeks. It was a big deal. Every preferred partner got a booth, a badge, and 15 minutes on stage. But one name was missing. Bryce's company. Not under confirmed, not under pending. Nowhere. I refreshed the page twice. Nothing. They'd been dropped. Quietly. Surgically. They probably didn't even know yet. Or they were still blaming an intern. But it was already over. They were being frozen out. I got back to work and turned my audit summary into something sharper, impact-driven. Every failure labeled with a color-coded risk tier. Red tags meant unsalvageable. Guess which vendor topped the red list? By Friday, Levi called me into her office. We want you to present these findings next week, she said, sliding a folder across the table. Not to us, to the Executive Procurement Committee. I blinked. That's fast. We move fast, she said, especially when we're bleeding. Inside the folder, executive names, room assignments, and one bullet point that stopped me, cold final vendor recommendations, led by Linda Cartwright. I wasn't just in the room now. I was shaping the room. I formed an LLC in under 48 hours. Northbeam Consulting. Quiet name, clean brand, easy to overlook except by the people who mattered. Redmont wired the retainer before the ink was dry. No back and forth, just a 2-sentence contract and full access. Then Levi handed me a lanyard with another vendor's logo. "You're going into the field," she said with a smirk. "Pack antacid." And just like that, I was back in motion. 3 sites, 3 disasters. And one woman me finally in control. 3 different training vendors. All 3 served up what I can only describe as performance art in mediocrity. The first read bullet points off a projector while cracking forklift injury jokes. The second passed out binders riddled with typos, including one unforgettable gem: discharge hazardous feelings responsibly. The third walked through a compliance checklist while ordering DoorDash and asking, "Does anyone know what GDPR stands for?" No follow-up materials, no assessments, no real systems, walkthroughs. Just bodies and chairs, checking boxes while Redmont hemorrhaged efficiency. I sat in the back, gripping my notebook, trying not to grind my teeth down to powder. That night, I opened a blank doc on my laptop and titled it Phase 1, Structural Overhaul. I started at the foundation learning outcomes by department and compliance category, then built assessment criteria based on actual metrics, system accuracy, error reduction, and turnaround time. I drafted tiered learning paths for high-turnover roles and flagged every topic where the one-size-fits-all approach had failed Redmont for years. Then I rewrote it all from scratch. The modules, the tone, the flow. Gone were the chipper intros and corporate fluff. My version opened with real case studies like the one where a missed step caused a $300K shipment delay. I ditched the HR stock photos for actual floor maps and interactive simulations. If you clicked the wrong thing, it didn't say, "Oops." It told you how much money you'd just flushed. When Levi saw the prototype, she stared for 10 seconds before saying, "Send this to the board deck team." I want it in Monday's prep call. The title slide, LFAD Framework, V0.3, proposed by Linda Cartwright. 1 week later, I was in the vendor evaluation huddle, not as a guest, but as a contributor. I walked in with my own tablet, my own coffee, and a deck that didn't pull punches. One slide in particular made the room go quiet. A heat map charting vendor effectiveness, cost versus impact versus compliance risk. Dead center in the bottom left corner, labeled high risk, due, low value, sat my former employer's logo. No drama, no commentary, just hard data. One exec squinted at the screen. Another scribbled furiously in the margin. Levi cleared her throat. "Linda, can you walk us through why this vendor consistently underperforms?" I didn't flinch. Recycled content. Zero customization by industry. Assessments with no enforcement. And a clear pattern of client dissatisfaction disguised by aggressive upselling. I never said Bryce's name. I didn't need to. This vendor, I concluded, has survived on institutional inertia. But the numbers don't lie. Nobody clapped. This wasn't a movie, just a few nods, a few phones lighting up. One procurement lead shut his notebook and muttered, "It's about damn time someone said it." That afternoon, I got an internal memo, confidential, labeled Strategy Alignment. My name was listed next to 3 major initiatives under LFAD Framework, External Consultant Oversight. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. I wasn't climbing the ladder anymore. I was building the structure. Then Tuesday morning, something slid under my apartment door. A thick envelope. Legal letterhead. A cease and desist. Trent's signature at the bottom, shaky, almost desperate. Subject line: immediate termination of competitive engagement and notice of client solicitation. I laughed out loud. He was accusing me of poaching clients and misusing IP. Bold for a man whose biggest contribution was the phrase, "Let's circle back." He claimed I broke post-employment terms. Too bad there weren't any. No NDA, no non-compete, no paperwork at all. Because we're a family, right? Turns out that only matters until you leave and take the furniture. Still, I trembled. Because fear, even when unfounded, is powerful. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Even when you know you're clean, accusation still leaves a stain. I forwarded Bryce's cease and desist to Redmont's legal team with a subject line that simply said, "Incoming circus. Thoughts?" Levi replied 10 minutes later. "Already flagged it. Sit tight. By noon, I was on a video call with Redmont's associate counsel, a former litigator with the calm, coiled energy of someone who's watched execs like Bryce fold under pressure. She smiled like this was sport. Just to clarify, she said, flipping the letter on screen like evidence, Redmont contracted your LLC for training framework development. You were never under a non-compete NDA or exclusivity agreement with your former employer. We checked. Twice. She already had a response drafted. Brutal. Precise. It listed every factual error, reaffirmed my role, and ended with a polite note. Further contact will be considered harassment. 3 hours later, Bryce's firm went silent. But I didn't celebrate. I've seen how this works. They go quiet, then stir the pot behind the scenes. I watched LinkedIn like a hawk waiting for the passive-aggressive rumors she poached a client. She's unstable. She burned bridges. Instead, I got a message from Redmont's procurement head. We'll be reviewing preferred vendor status next quarter. Just FYI, no emoji, no fluff. But it might as well have been a trumpet blast. Preferred vendor status meant long-term contracts, meant revenue locked in, meant Bryce's firm wasn't just out, they were erased. I kept my head down and delivered phase 2 ahead of schedule. Dashboards got tighter, modules sharper. I added feedback loops so Redmont's managers could flag training gaps in real time. The system evolved with them, practical living, responsive. After one presentation, Levi stopped me in the hallway. People assume consultants just tear things down, she said. But you're building something. I shrugged. I got tired of waiting for permission. That same week, Bryce's company posted a vague update on LinkedIn about refocusing training for niche sectors. No logos, no clients. Just smoke signals from a ship already taking on water. And I wasn't scared anymore. I was done apologizing for being right. Done building cathedrals with someone else's name on the cornerstone. Then it happened. I opened a boardroom deck from Redmont's internal system and saw it my name. Not buried in the footnotes. Not buried under branding. Vendor Retraining Initiative. Phase 1 lead. Linda Cartwright, Northbeam Consulting, my fonts, my framework, my voice. By week's end, the new material had launched in 5 regional hubs and 1 international office. Feedback came in fast clear. Best onboarding in years. We finally understand why things work the way they do. Someone from Redmont's Czech division even emailed asking for a translated version, said his team had started calling it the Cartwright system. Levi scheduled a progress briefing with Redmont's executive procurement group. I showed up with live metrics, screenshots, and testimonials embedded in the slides like quiet confetti. The first slide. Just one sentence. Clarity is kindness. Confusion is cost. I didn't quote anyone. That was mine. After the meeting, a VP came up to me and said, "You've got the kind of clean aggression I like to see. We're greenlighting phase 2. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the blade finally dropped. Redmont terminated all contracts with Bryce's company. No calls, no meetings. Just a cold email. All agreements concluded. No further deliverables required. I didn't find out through a press release. I heard it in a whisper. Forwarded Slack thread, immediate decoupling. Vendor 2133. Vendor 2133 was Bryce. The postscript sealed it. Revoke access. Archive all. Notify legal on contact. It was surgical. Ruthless. Deserved. I never wanted to ruin anyone. But I'd stopped apologizing for outperforming people who thought they owned me. The last 4 emails Bryce's team sent to Redmont bounced. Cartwright must have cut a deal. One message read, "Do we have a back channel? Send a recovery team. Maybe fly out." A recovery team. Like this was a hostage situation, not a desperate scramble for scraps from a table they no longer owned. A former colleague forwarded me the thread with one line. "It's chaos over here. He's blaming everyone but himself." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I was sitting in a glass-walled war room on Redmont's 18th floor, reviewing the final mock-ups of the new vendor onboarding flow. Every checkbox drop-down and sentence had passed through my hands. It wasn't just polished. It worked. It felt like standing at the top of a mountain I once thought didn't exist, until I looked down and saw the wreckage of every ladder I'd been told to climb. And somewhere down there, I could imagine Bryce pacing his office, still thinking this was salvageable. But I had already changed the locks. Redmont's vendor directory quietly updated that Monday. No memo, no announcement, just a silent refresh of the internal supplier index. And Bryce's firm, gone. Not flagged, not archived, deleted. Vendor 2133 no longer existed in the system. I sat in the executive workspace, sipping coffee that tasted like victory, watching the final dominoes fall, not with fanfare, but precision. It wasn't satisfying in a giddy way. It was calm, surgical. And it didn't stop there. Days later, I got a call from an old client. Linda, quick question. Did you work on the express load compliance program last year? Because we were told that was Bryce's team. But it looks like your structure. They weren't the only ones asking. 2 more clients that Redmont had once referred to Bryce's firm began reassessing contracts. Deals paused, scopes frozen. The house of glossy brochures Bryce built had become a liability. Then came the recruiter call. Smooth voice, confident tone. Linda Cartwright, right? We've had 3 execs mention your name this week. Would you be open to an advisory role, high-impact transformation? Very flexible, very visible. She didn't name the company. She didn't need to. Word was out. The woman behind the curtain had stepped into the light and the industry noticed. Then came the cherry on top. Redmont's closed-door summit. No press, no fluff. Just a war room full of top supply chain executives mapping out the next fiscal year. They wanted me to keynote. Levi called personally. This isn't a presentation, she said. It's a directive. You set the new standard. They need to see it. I said yes. Built a deck that looked nothing like Bryce's style. No fluff, no filler. Just raw before and after stats. Real failures, anonymized data, and a quiet, brutal dismantling of outdated vendor logic. I called it when training becomes infrastructure. They gave me a standing ovation. Meanwhile, Bryce's world kept shrinking. His once busy LinkedIn feed had gone still no new posts, no humble brags. Just a profile stuck in limbo. Then the exodus began. Sarah from HR left. Then Ethan from sales. 2 junior consultants followed ones who used to DM me at midnight asking for career advice. Now their profiles said, open to work. And finally, the whispers turned into confirmation. Bryce's firm had lost over $8 million in projected pipeline. Not signed revenue, just the illusion of momentum. But in business, that illusion is currency. And now, it was gone. Pipeline, just the illusion of momentum. The thing investors squint at and pretend is revenue. And now, gone. When your biggest client cuts ties and their procurement chief starts making quiet calls, word spreads fast. Don't touch this vendor with a 10-foot pole. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and my laptop open. I didn't check LinkedIn, didn't reply to the flood of congratulations. I opened a blank doc and typed 4 words, build what they broke. Somewhere Bryce was probably still spinning, still blaming, still promising miracles he couldn't deliver. But I wasn't part of his orbit anymore. I was the gravity now. The boardroom smelled like lacquered wood and inevitability. 12 chairs, 11 filled, 1 empty. I sat at the head pen, poised not for show, but for record. Everyone knew who I was now. I wasn't the quiet one fixing broken vendors. I was the architect they were building on. The conversation had shifted. I wasn't presenting to them anymore. I was speaking with them. Vendor metrics, oversight tiers, systemic change. Then Levi slid a folder across the table. "We'd like to formalize your role," she said. Neutral voice, warm eyes, executive advisor, direct report to the board, 6-figure base, equity in the oversight platform, flexible timelines, but we're hoping it's immediate. I blinked once, then nodded. Yes, quiet, because in rooms like that volume is insecurity. We moved on. Another vendor rep was scheduled. Legacy support walked through nothing I hadn't dismantled a dozen times. Then the door opened, not late, not expected. Bryce walked in. The confidence was gone, replaced by pale skin and exhausted eyes. He scanned the room for allies. Then he saw me. I didn't flinch, didn't scowl, just turned in my chair. "Thank you for coming," I said evenly. "We'll be reviewing all past performance. I believe you were next." Silence. He opened his mouth, but nothing came. Just a twitch in the jaw, a quiet collapse. He took the empty seat. Alone. No packets, no support. Just red flags, compliance gaps. Everything I once flagged from a cubicle now lit up on 42-inch displays. When it ended, no one looked at him. Just buzzing phones and quiet exits. I stayed behind finishing my coffee. Bryce shuffled out without a word. I whispered to the empty room, the last workshop I ran wasn't free. It just came with a different invoice. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told to just be grateful, then you know what this journey meant. I didn't burn bridges, I built something better. And now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below, what would you have done in my place? What moment in your career changed everything? Your voice matters here. And if this story lit even a small fire in you, hit that like button and subscribe. Because standing up for yourself isn't arrogance, it's clarity. Keep your standards, protect your value, and when they tell you to stay small, build anyway.